November 22nd. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Madam Chair, Chairwoman Johnson,
Present.
Vice Chair Sloan,
Present.
Member Betancourt, Member Connors,
Present.
Member Jack Foley,
Present.
Member Maderas, Member Jones.
Present.
Executive Director Miguel Nunez,
Present.
Legal Counsel Raymond Carson.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. First item on the agenda, the board may hear and vote upon a complaint and challenge filed by Joanne C. Miller against Salvatore De Luis, Democratic candidate for Council Ward 4, City of Warwick, and against the Democratic Party and the Secretary of State. Going to you, Ray.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The parties can appear, who are here can appear at the tables. I should note for the record that shortly before I left my office, I did receive a motion to dismiss from or on behalf of Mr. De Luis. I likewise, do we have a seat for you, Angel?
I was going to just say, I'm here on behalf of the Rhode Island Secretary of State, but I'm also happy to sit down and then take questions if you have any.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I think you're a party. I know that you may have seen that in the supplemental complaint, there was a reference to an injunction against the secretary. So I think it's appropriate for you to be here. So we have two options, Madam Chair. We can either consider the motion to dismiss filed by Mr. Petrarca on behalf of Mr. De Luis, or I could start this process off by just giving you my legal reaction to the filing of the complaint at this time. So I defer it to the board on that, whether they want to hear a motion or rather hear from me first.
Rather hear him first.
Okay,
Yeah.
very well. I mean,
Madam Chair, if I could just ask
Yes.
before you do that, if we could just have everybody at the table identify themselves.
certainly.
Margie Cadino, Chairman for the Warwick Republican City Committee. Twin candidate for Ward 4, Warwick.
Can you just pull the mic just so folks, anyone watching or listening? Thank you.
Nicholas Gorham for Joanne Miller. And Madam Chair, I didn't hear that we were going to get a chance to be heard.
You will
necessarily.
have a chance to be heard once our council briefs us.
Okay, thank you.
David Petrarca on behalf of Salvatore De Luis.
Salvatore De Luis.
Angel Taveras on behalf of the Rhode Island Secretary of State, Greg Amore.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So before the board is a complaint that was filed on November 14. First, there was a handwritten complaint filed by the complainant, Ms. Miller. November 14 was 9 days following the election that occurred, the general election of November 5. The complaint itself references allegations, arguments pertaining to conduct that occurred on or about September 11 of this year. The complaint on its face alleges that the candidate who succeeded for the office of Ward 4 for the City of Warwick Council was a appropriate substitution for the previous Democratic nominee of Mr. I don't have his name here, but of the previous nominee for that office, and that the substitution of Mr. De Luis was in accordance with Chapter 15 of Title 17 of the general laws. The complaint asserts that while the substitution was properly done by the local ward committee, that there was no statutory underpinning and therefore no statutory right to have Mr. De Luis' name appear on the printed ballot, which was done by the Secretary of State. That is the focus of the challenge asserted by Ms. Miller. Before the board reaches that issue, if it decides to reach that issue, there are very, very important public policies that come into play in this case. First and foremost, we have the doctrine of finality, and we have the doctrine of timeliness on complaints. These loom over the head of the Board of Elections at all times. There are some statutory deadlines contained in our election framework where a matter of days is basically a lifetime. And we all are governed by those very, very strict guidelines. Our Supreme Court has addressed these type of issues before when they've come before our board, and they've given this board guidance, and they go back into the 1980s at least. And in 1990, there was a decision involving then candidate Vincent A. Cianci for mayor of Providence. And in that case, the candidate Cianci succeeded in a three-way race and was declared to have been the successful candidate after a recount occurred. And in the Cianci matter, a complaint was filed after he actually won the election, claiming that he was not eligible to have that office. And the Supreme Court addressed that issue after this board addressed the complaint. That dealt with a different section of Title 17 that doesn't come directly into play, but is very instructive for the board and for the public to understand. And the court made clear that there is an importance when a person running for office knows of a claim that they have that could address the election itself. It behooves them to act on that action, on that claim with great urgency. And the failure to do so, while it might not be a problem in a civil context in a contract dispute, is fatal to a claim, fatal. And the Supreme Court discussed the doctrine of finality. It referenced a case, Van Dam, which occurred just a short while before Cianci was before it. That case spoke in part saying, and this is the same Supreme Court that we're guided by, the public policy of this state requires that challenges to qualification of candidates for public office be resolved as quickly as possible in order that an election may take place upon the dates previously ordained by the General Assembly. The state has a compelling interest in the validity and finality of the election of candidates to all public offices, and it goes on. As the court admonished the parties, only prompt challenges presented in accordance with statutory and case law may be considered. In the Cianci case, this very board did not consider the challenge that was presented on the eligibility of Mr. Cianci because it occurred after the election, as opposed to before Mr. Cianci ran for that office, as he did. The similar reasoning, in my judgment, Madam Chair, and members of the board, applies here. We have someone who claims to have had a right, a challenge to stop the inclusion of a name of a candidate on the ballot after they were properly substituted. Now, I have my own assessment as to whether or not there is any merit to that claim. In my judgment, the governing statute here doesn't prohibit the Secretary of State from including names that the Secretary knows are the valid candidates. The statute basically says that in the context of the death of a nominee, that when time exists, the Secretary shall include that name. It is silent on what to do with all of the other people who may become eligible through any process, but become eligible nonetheless, validly eligible before the ballot is published. That silence is where the challenger has her own interpretation of it. But in my judgment, Madam Chair, members of the board, we should not reach the merits of a claim on a matter that ripened on or about September 11, when this could have been brought before a body such as the board. It was necessary to file the action at that time if there was, in fact, in this very complaint, there's a claim for an injunction against the secretary. Well, even if this was before a court, I don't know how they could enjoin any conduct that's already taken place. But at the very least, this board has the authority to take whatever actions it must take regarding an election-related matter if it is timely filed, but not if it isn't. So with that being said, I know there's a motion to dismiss pending. I know that the board may or may not wish to hear from anyone, but in the absence of the motion that was just filed a few moments ago before I came here, I don't think the board needs to even reach that motion. This board has its own authority to decline to hear a matter and to dismiss it when this board views, if it is their judgment, that the case was untimely, that people, as the CNC court has said, when time and effort has gone in, people have run for the office, the public has spoken. When that has occurred, the process is essentially over. That is not the time to start to challenge what occurred before that election took place. So my opinion is, my recommendation is that the matter should be dismissed as being untimely in order to be faithful to the important public doctrine of finality of an election. And for that reason, I make that recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Ray. Any board members wish to comment, ask questions of Ray?
I mean, I obviously, I agree with everything our counsel has said. This is a situation where
Would you speak up, please?
I said, I agree with everything that our counsel has said. This is a situation in which the complaining party had other remedies available to her when she found out or believed that there was some type of irregularity. To suggest on this date, after we've had a general election and the people have decided, to suggest at this point that the Secretary of State shouldn't have put this matter on the ballot, I think is frankly too little too late. But that's just one opinion that I have. And I mean, I would be prepared to vote on this now, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels, so.
Well, I think people over here, they should have another opportunity to talk.
Commissioner?
I tend to agree with the timeliness matter. I would, however, like to hear from Ms. Miller or her attorney on
That
the
issue.
matter of timeliness,
Hmm.
not the merits of the complaint, if possible,
I would
and
agree
if
with
that's
that.
appropriate.
Yes, okay. To Ray, would we have to swear them both in?
Both.
Ms. Miller and her attorney,
Oh, no,
or
the
whoever
attorney-
is going to
The
be?
attorney would just be presenting argument, but I believe Ms. Miller will be presenting facts, so yes, we should swear her in.
Ms. Miller, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Counsel?
Sure. Would it be possible for both of us to be heard? I know she wants to say something.
I think, yes, and just remember, we're speaking about the merits of the timeliness, right? Is that what you, yes, okay.
I just want to place
And
on
if
the
you could
record-
just
Yeah.
speak into the,
Sure. I did not get a copy of a motion to dismiss. I left my office at 1:30 today. I don't know when it was sent. I had no idea that this was going to be done.
I think I received it at probably at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'm more than 30 minutes away, and I like to be early. So I never got the motion to dismiss, and I think it was filed by
Mr.
Mr.
Petracca.
DeLuise's attorney.
Yes.
And I talked to his attorney, I think, yesterday. So he knew that I was on this case, and he knew that I was coming today because I told him I'm going to make a presentation to the Board of Elections. So I don't like it when I get something when I'm driving here. That's not fair. You know, the one thing we have here is fairness. And I don't think it's appropriate to be filing a motion to dismiss. And I'm sorry you didn't get it either.
Well, I mean, I got it electronically at about 1:30 or so.
Well,
I think it was sent to all of us. Is that right? Did you get it, Mr. Tavares?
My stamp on it says 1251.
Okay.
In terms of the email, and it has Mr. Marcaccio, Mr. Gorham, or DOE.
Can any of these people speak?
I
No idea
gotta-
who they are.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Please.
Sure, to be clear, Mr. Marcaccio, the copy that I have here says 1251. It's addressed to you at your email, to Nick Gorham at gorhamlaw.com, to me, to the BOE.elections@electionsri.gov. Issaris Birchfield, I think .birchfield@electionsri.gov.
That's the board.
And Miguel Nunez.
Yeah, and I don't mean to suggest that, I mean, it may have come in at that time. I saw it at around 1:30. Before you move on, from that, Mr. Gorham, just bear in mind, on behalf of any party, whether it's the secretary or Mr. DeLuise, this board scheduled this on a very quick turnaround to accommodate the Open Meetings Act. This was originally going to be, the board was meeting originally yesterday to certify the election, but because of your complaint, they held off until today. But I don't know if anyone had much more notice than that 2 days, but just bear that in mind.
well,
If I could respond to the timeliness.
If, counsel, I realize you both gonna argue back and forth as to what the timeliness of the matter is. I think that, our commission has asked for some information.
Sure.
We haven't even acted on any of the motions. We haven't even determined whether we're gonna act on any of the motions. So if we can just go forward from here
by
and
the
answer
way,
the commissioner's questions.
And if I will, I'm also going to remind, if you can speak into the microphone, I'm also going to remind those of you, the public that are here, welcome in the audience. What we're not going to do is yell out in the middle of us conducting our hearing out of fairness to all the participants.
Thank you. And by the
I
way,
think
thank you
it's
for.
not close enough to your mouth.
Really? Boy,
So you can sit, I mean, you can sit, lean it in, just, please.
Usually my mic was shut off when I was. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the board for gathering together like this. It's much appreciated both by my client and me. The only thing I can say about the timeliness is that I believe that my client and the Republican Party chair in Warwick made a very diligent effort to get to the truth of the status of this, of Mr. DeLuise. And it really was not possible for them to do it much sooner than they did. They finally got a letter today with the documents from the city of Warwick indicating when we didn't even have the letter nominating him by the Democratic City Committee. We got that today. So I don't know what would have happened if they started earlier, but they started, how many days ago was it? 2 days ago. When was the request made, though? 3 days ago. So, and for what it's worth, the answer until today was, we have 10 days to give you the information because that's the Open Records Act. So, I mean, there was some, exculpatory reasons why they didn't come in here immediately. I still think the issue about 17-15-38, vacancies among nominees is an issue that doesn't really it doesn't matter. The election went forward. I don't see any prejudice to anyone in getting to the bottom of this legal issue. And I listened carefully to Mr. Marcaccio, but I think the statute 17-15-38 is dispositive of the issue that we're here for, which is, why was he on the ballot? There is no basis whatsoever as to why he was on the ballot. And I have all the laws here. I'm ready to hand them out, if I may. If I may just approach.
Do we have that otherwise?
What do you want to,
These are just
Nick?
That's
copies
fine.
of
If
the
you want to
laws.
hand them to
Sure.
council, he can
Sure.
pass it down.
This is the governing session.
Yes, and others.
And then if you could, once we get that, cite exactly which portion of it you're,
Sure. I'm talking about 17-15-38 first and foremost.
thanks, Ray.
And I highlighted each of the copies that I handed out. I'm going to represent to you first, just to read 38 in its proper context. There is nothing in the general laws that says that the nominee for the nominee of the party for the office does not specify, the general laws do not specify anywhere that that person is on the ballot. That's what this case is about, being on the ballot, because it was a 53 vote margin in Ward 4 in Warwick, which is plenty of votes. She lost by 53 votes. So here's the portion that I highlighted. It says, the person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office. And here's the part that I highlighted. And if in case of the death of a nominee time will permit, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot. That's clear and unambiguous. The only way that someone can be placed on the ballot is if his predecessor as a candidate dies. That's it. It couldn't be clearer. The sentence is not disjunctive. Actually, it is disjunctive at the comma. They're saying, and if it's a death and time permits, you can put them on. It does, and you can go anywhere else in the general laws you want.
Yes, we can, yeah. So before I give council, our council or other council time to respond, we're addressing the timeliness of the argument. Hang on, please. So September 11th, the same day that Mr. Penta withdrew and Mr. DeLuise was appointed the same day, between September 11th and the general election, that's 24 days. So I would love to, again, per the commissioner's request, understand why this wasn't brought before this board and a formal complaint filed within the 24 days that Mr. DeLuise was on the ballot that entire time till
Understood.
November 5th.
And I know they want to speak. I was just trying to explain that.
But I think all due respect, that wasn't something that we were asking to argue right now. We're addressing the timeliness.
But, what I was trying to argue is the issue wasn't going to go away if we waited longer.
Well, we could have,
It's an issue that was cast.
it's an issue,
It
right?
was, the die was cast on the day that person was appointed and then placed on the ballot.
And yes,
But if you'd
but it
like to
wasn't-
have them speak first, I'm not gonna interfere with that.
yes, go ahead, please, Ms. Miller.
I think the caveat in question is before Republicans and some Democrats as well came alongside me and were aware of the issue. I, as an independent, just came, heard of it, was apprised of the law, and came to the Board of Elections, contacted the Secretary of State's office, was shot over to my local Board of Canvassers. They said, no, call the Board of Elections. I called the Board of Elections again, and they said, no, you need to call the Secretary of State. And when I did, I spoke with the secretary there, and she said, she got very flustered, and I said, haven't you heard from the Republican Party too? I said, what can I do? What do I need to file? I asked it of all 3 places because I'm an independent and I don't have, a whole bunch of lawyers and people behind me. So I came to you, the source, so that I could file a timely something or other. And I got nothing. In fact, the Secretary of State's secretary said, she literally said, sorry, the ballots are at the printers. And this was just a few days after Mike Penta withdrew. So that is the caveat that I want you to consider to hear, because I did attempt. And when I filed for the recount, I just happened to ask for, I said, who's, the head of here, may I speak to him? And I then in person addressed that issue, knowing that probably I was out of some kind of timeline, but also knowing that I had called here at least twice and asked. I've brought my phone records too, and I haven't had time to go through them, but I can honestly tell you that I did. and we can forensically look through that if you need to. But that is why I'm asking for the caveat for this case to be heard, because I substantively tried to get in here timely and find out what I needed to file.
Thank you, Ms.
Well,
Miller.
Ms. Miller, on that point, just so I understand, you learned of the issue of the ballot being printed, you said a few days after Mr. Penta withdrew and the substitution occurred. What happened between that time, a few days after the substitution occurred, which was on or about September 11, and November 14 when you filed? Why did you wait that amount of
I
time?
didn't. Within 2 days, I had made phone calls here to the Secretary of State's office, who already said the ballots were at the printer, within 2 days.
And
maybe
then you
3.
waited another until
then
the
here-
24, until
And
the
then- 'cause I
14th?
kept getting shot back. You are responsible to inform me when not like, out here, okay, they should somehow contact me and tell me the laws. No, but when I approach you, your job is to inform me, and no one did. And I tried, and I felt like I'm banging my head against the wall. And then I just went, well, all right, we'll see. We'll just go, through the elections. But when I came here for the recount, it being so close, it started to become a little dear to my heart. Like, this is very close, and laws might not have been followed. And my constituents, they deserve for the laws to be followed, that I need to win fairly. They need to know this other man who's being put on the ballot. He needs to have followed all the procedures. Maybe he didn't have to walk in 92-degree weather like I did for weeks getting signatures, because there is a process where,
So you're saying, Ms. Miller, that you decided to file after you lost the election?
no, sir.
When did you
If I
decide
didn't,
when did you file the complaint? Was it
I filed
before?
it when I was informed of, I got people who, I started contacting people again as this came. I just said it to you. I asked how to file within 2 or 3 days of the election, of Mike Penta.
I
pulling out.
understand
I
that.
was not informed, and I was shot back from agency to agency. Then I just stopped and I waited for the election. It was very close, and people started to talk to me and say, whatever happened with that issue with him being on the ballot? And then because it was so close, I said, from the beginning I wanted to, but now can I pursue it when I have people with knowledge coming to me to say they will help me, which you didn't. Sorry to put it that way.
Yes, you may.
Who did you say informed you? You
Who did I
said,
say?
you said people informed you.
Yeah, people inform me. The Republican Party informed me, some Democrats who are, voter watchdogs, other groups like that. I'm trying to think of their names right now, but different groups, they started to reach out to me and I started to reach out to them and somebody would give me another number. So I was able to finally get somebody who worked for me pro bono to be able to file as soon as I could.
When did those groups reach out to you?
From the beginning, actually, a lawyer who's not a lawyer for the Republican Party, but a lawyer who is a Republican, shot me an email within a couple of days of Mike Penta withdrawing. And that's when there was some interest in trying to help me. And then I went, and then Marjorie also went and contacted you. And if you can look at her affidavit of frustration, you will see that she also attempted to do something prior to the election. So I'm not sour grapes. I'm not sour grapes.
But
I'm
the
just-
I just have one other question. But did the lawyer advise you that you had possibilities to go to court back at that point? Or
No,
to come
no.
before this board at that point?
He's not a Rhode Island lawyer. I just want to say that.
No, he didn't, but I did.
You-
He didn't tell me to come to you, but I came to you. I
Okay,
was
so
like,
can you-
who?
Can you detail what happened when you contacted our office?
I contacted your office
And
and
when was that?
And that was, I can't give you the exact date. I'll try to find it if you would like me to
You can give it to me
subsequently.
approximately.
Yeah, between the date that Mike Penta pulled out, which I think was the 11th or 12th, and like maybe the 14th,
Okay,
15th,
so within a couple of days.
16th. Yeah, but I think it was
Okay.
within a couple of days when I received that email. I called here
You
and I
called via
here.
telephone.
via telephone.
Okay,
Yes,
and
I
what
called
happened?
at the Board of Elections and I said, listen, I was surprised that possibly the candidate was being put on the printed ballot, not according to law. What do I do? Is there something that I can file? Because subsequently I found, like, if you don't get signatures, there's a little form there where you can,
Okay.
So, but whoever it was at the front desk said, gee, I don't know. And I said, well, can you ask somebody? And she said, well, I'll have somebody get back to you. And nobody got back to me. And then she also said, you could also call the Secretary of State. And I said, okay. So I called the Secretary of State. And that's when I had the conversation with the secretary there, who said the ballots were already at the printer. And she said, well, you can, no, who said that? So, somebody also said you can try your own board of canvassers in Warwick. And I did, it was the secretary here, because it was not the Secretary of State's office. She only told me that he was already on the printed ballot. So when I was also in the conversation with the person here who didn't know exactly what to do and would leave a message for somebody to call me back, she said, you could also try your local board of canvassers. And that's when I called there and they said, no, we don't have anything to do with that. It's the Board of Elections. And I called you back and she said, no. I'm not sure, but we'll get back to you. So I don't know.
And so your testimony is that between that call and a couple of days ago, you never got any other information from the board?
I never did. I never got a call back from the Secretary of State. I think I also, at the time, somewhere, I think a little after that, maybe a week after all that, I did send an email to the ACLU because I wasn't getting any response. So I wanted to see if they knew what the laws were.
And what was the response from them?
No response from them either. 6 to 8 weeks, they have to review something.
Can I say?
Yes, please, I think you
There
can.
there is
Wait
another
it.
issue, by the way, that may be very germane to the appropriateness of this candidate being declared the winner, which they found out today, after us. So I-
Okay, excuse me, could I just,
Yes.
you've been
Do I need
waiting.
to be sworn in?
I don't,
Does she need to be sworn in?
I'm sorry. Is someone else going to be speaking on behalf of Ms. Miller?
Yes.
If she is, then yes, she should be sworn in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Okay, so when I heard that Mr. Penta, you're talking about a time frame of when something was done. That Friday, on the 13th, I went down to the Board of Canvas. I spoke to Krista. I said, did they appoint somebody? She said, yep, it's Salvador De Luis. And I said, okay. I'm like, and he's not going to be on the ballot. And she said, well, yes. I said, how? That's not what the law states. And she just went, I get direction from the Secretary of State. You need to contact them. So by the time I got my ducks in a row, it was after business hours on Friday. That first thing on Monday morning, I called Kathy, the Secretary of State. I had about a 30-minute circle conversation, meaning I went over it. She's like, well, why are you calling? I said, well, because it clearly states in death, he didn't die. And she went, he didn't die? I said, no. He moved out of the city of Warwick. He went to East Greenwich. He shouldn't be allowed on that ballot. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that he's allowed to be a candidate, but he shouldn't be on the ballot. And she's like, well, this is always something that's been done. It's allowed to be done. It's already been to the printers. I said, when did it go to the printers? And she said, well, on Friday, when the close of business, they sent it to the printers. I said, what can I do? I was told that there was nothing that could be done. So you're talking about a time frame that I was in the time frame, and I have the Secretary of State telling me there was nothing that could be done. And I'm like, so they're just gonna be printed. She goes, yep, it had to be mailed out. And then that's why they went off to the printers over the weekend.
Thank
And-
you.
And you're the chairperson of the Republican Party in
Of
Warwick?
Warwick, yes.
And so at that point, you said, okay,
I said, so what can we do? She said, there's nothing that can be done. And then I made phone calls. I know for months, it had to be that you were calling everywhere. Like, and at this point, it's hard to get an attorney. So,
okay,
right,
I
so
understand you made phone calls. What else did you do besides make phone calls?
constantly kept bringing it up. I
To
mean, to several people. But
Did
we're
you
talking
file
about,
anything with the Board of Elections?
no, because we were
Did you
told there's
file
nothing else
anything with the
done.
Secretary of State?
She was handling, Secretary of State told me there was nothing else. There's already done. No, I did not.
Okay, you
But
didn't file
it's-
anything.
But no, but it's a conversation of saying we did nothing, that we did something. We fought for quite some time and started getting nowhere. If we had known by calling either here or the Secretary of State, yeah, if you have a complaint, fill out this form, this is where you can find it, this would not be going on right now.
So you, okay, no,
Okay.
that's all I have. Madam Chair.
I have a-
Commissioner Schultz.
But did you take a look at the statutes? I mean,
I
the
did.
Board of Elections, there's a whole title dealing with elections. Did you look at those?
I did. So to be, like, I looked at.
When?
Several times. I even argued over the point of being, okay, well, where's the declaration page? I understand that they're allowed to appoint, but to become a candidate per your guidelines, they have to fill out a page, which was never filled out, I found out today. There's also to be nominating on a ballot, you need signatures. There's nothing in that title that states that he's allowed to take other, and I argued that point with the Secretary of State. So there, I looked over everything.
Well, we'll get to that later,
Yes.
but if you had a grievance or
Mhm.
complaint, you could have filed a complaint with the Board of Canvassers and started the process going, or filed with the Board of Elections, okay? It's your obligation to do that.
All right,
The
but we're
board
doing-
here is not going to tell you how to run an election.
But that's.
We're here is to adjudicate, issues.
Right,
That's
but
our
we-
position here, okay? We don't take sides,
I
but
understand
it's
that.
upon the incumbent, the candidate, to read the statute, okay? And present a case if they think there is a case.
And then I would assume that it's up to the Board of Canvas, when we go to a complaint, they would give some sort of a direction on where to go, not we take direction from the Secretary of State, you have to talk to them.
But that's not a reason for redoing the whole election, okay? We're dealing with a finality here. The
Right.
election's over.
But he's
Okay.
just saying, he was saying there
So
was
I'd like to
nothing.
know,
that
I'd like
was
to know
done.
on the timeliness, why you waited so long?
We haven't waited.
In fairness, I think one thing they've shown is that they didn't wait
Well,
long.
they haven't shown that at all, Counsel. Counsel,
Well,
they
it
haven't
depends.
shown that at all.
Hold on, we're just, I haven't explained. Can I explain? They work diligently within their community to find out what, if any, remedy they could have, and they've tried to pursue a remedy.
Right.
And eventually, lo and behold, today, they found out that no declaration of candidacy was filed either by the candidate, never filed one. Now, look, declaration of candidacy is an important piece of paper. They didn't find it out till today. you have to aver the office sought, the place and date of birth, the length of residence, and then, you have to make sure that you're a good person to run for office. They got that today. They ordered it, how long ago? 3 days ago. But, okay, but they were, my point is, they were
So
diligent.
is your suggestion that 3 days ago, this would have been timely?
No, I think they were working on it from the beginning. And, you're right, they didn't come here. And, reading, I have trouble reading all these laws. Every time I come here, I have to study to get ready.
So-
It's not easy.
So let me ask another question to the
Sure.
Republican chair. Was there a Republican candidate in this election?
She's on my committee. So we had 2 people originally on the ballot from my actual committee. Joanne is part of the committee as a registered Republican. We had someone who was running as a Republican. She ran as an independent to have a better chance.
Okay, at
He
any,
stepped out. The
Okay.
Republicans withdrew from the race. Joanne stayed on as an independent.
at any point, did you contact your legal counsel with regard to this issue? I know you said you contacted the board of canvassers, and the
Yes.
secretary, but did you contact your legal counsel at any point?
I contacted the state party. Yes, I did.
When was that?
It was the Friday before, it was the 13th.
Okay.
Yep.
And did legal counsel tell you to file anything at that point, or that they were going to file anything on your behalf?
They said because she was an independent, it was something that I had to call the Secretary of State and go get guidance from them, which I did that Monday morning. And I was told there was nothing I could do and there was nothing to be filled out.
And at that point, did you go back to legal counsel, or did it
At that
end?
point, I've been working with Joanne for months, which she's been going back and forth with you guys, been in communication, trying to find, it's cost money to get an attorney. So we've been literally trying quite some time to fight this.
And before I go to you, Commissioner Jack Foney, I'm hearing a lot of, there were conversations. I happen to know all the staff teams at the cities and towns, Secretary of State here at the board, and know them to be as responsive, as they can be to address these matters. Did you ever put anything in writing? Did you send an email with, it was all verbal?
Because it's a quicker, a lot of times things get missed, they don't respond back.
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at is we have no record
I understand.
of this, so
I did file an affidavit
when?
today.
Okay, that's, we're again talking,
I
about the
understand.
timeliness, and I'm not reducing anyone's concerns, but I think that is an issue for us to not have a record. Yep, and, Council, did you have something, Commissioner Jack Boney? Yes,
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say on behalf of Secretary Omari's office, we don't dispute what they have said today. We also don't dispute that our response would have been that there's nothing that you can do. You are an adjudicator, you're adjudicating this claim, so we made a decision. I'm happy to explain why if you'd like, but it's really, at this point, we're not really a party as much as we made the initial decision. I don't want to overstep my bounds, but we stand by our decision. We stand by our interpretation of the statute. You have capable legal counsel and other legal counsel there. And I would say respectfully, I disagree with Mr. Gorham's interpretation, and especially when you read the whole statute. But happy to go further in, but I wanted to say that we don't dispute what Ms. Miller, what Mr. Dino has said relative to making contact with our office, and the response being that the ballots were at the printer and that there was not anything to be done at that time. So I wanted to put that there. So that part's not in dispute, but we stand by our decision.
thank you. Commissioner Jack Boney, do you have something?
Yes, I just have some questions. First of all, it seems to me that if someone's having a hard time getting an answer, that makes me very uncomfortable because most people don't, even as Attorney Gorham has pointed out, the law is complicated, the statutes are complicated, the regulations are complicated. So I think it makes me uncomfortable that someone can't get an answer, and as a result that we're saying, sorry, it's too late. I understand a complaint has not been filed, but I don't see anything in this, I don't know where it says, where's the complaint procedure defined, Ray? Is it in our regulations or is it somewhere in the statutes?
For complaints, we have a regulation on filing complaints, yes.
Okay, so it's not particularly in the, so reading the statute wouldn't allow someone to say, oh, this is how I do it.
Especially under this chapter of chapter 15, it would not.
Yeah, and I don't know what the nature of the affidavit is that is to be presented. I don't know if that's to
Yes.
say that the phone calls were made at a certain time or what the nature of that is, but
I know that we received that earlier today. That's from Ms. Tudino, who's here.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to make
Yeah, so we do, and really it would be hearsay, but she is here to answer any questions. But the affidavit itself, to my knowledge, doesn't say even the date that she spoke to Kathy from the Secretary of State, but that's regardless. I mean, I think that counsel for the Secretary has made clear that they're not disputing the underlying facts. It's that they stand by their interpretation of the statute, and I see nothing wrong with the interpretation by the Secretary at all. But it's so important that the board, a court of law, receive complaints in a very timely basis. And like I said, if this was a civil matter involving a contract dispute, this is very timely. But in a statutory framework where the General Assembly has given us sometimes a matter of days to submit a challenge, and where so much is at stake, namely the publication, the printing of a ballot, it's evident, I think, for this party here today, and for the public to understand that this complaint was just filed, and we've immediately amassed all the people who are here before you for this hearing on the record, under oath. Had this been done on September 13, the same thing would have been done at that time, so that you would have gotten a decision before the people and the candidates expended money, time, and had a full election. There's no question on the validity of the ballots of the people who voted. It's not like we're saying something was tampered with, but I just want to emphasize that for the record, that as soon as the complaint was filed, this entire process was put in place and would have been done on September 13 had you timely brought this to this board's attention.
So just to follow up on that, I guess my point being that I think it sounds like I'm taking Ms. Miller and I'm sorry, the chairwoman, I had a word that she attempted to understand the process. I don't fully understand the process and I sit on the board. So I would expect that if someone, and this is not a criticism of anyone in the Secretary of State's office or here, but if someone calls here with a question, I would expect that there should be a follow-up. And I'm not saying that didn't have, we don't have the facts in front of us, so it's hard to say. But I don't want to hang my hat on saying, sorry, because you didn't get the right person on the phone, you can't actually file this complaint. And I understand the timeliness. It's different here because we do have an obligation to print the ballots in time because that's better for the public good as opposed to one maybe complaint in a race. I get that. It's a balance and it's difficult to say, but I do. So that being said, I just have a question beyond the timeliness for you, Ray, is just in the statute, it doesn't specifically speak to, so the timing as I understand it here is 3 days after the party primary, which is September 10th, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So just in terms, because the statute really speaks to 3 days after and 3 days before, the 3 days preceding. Sorry, I'm not being very clear here. The third day following the last day of holding the party primaries, is that September 13th in this case?
I can't tell you the date offhand. I can tell you that September, I can tell you that the substitution was within that timeframe, but I can't tell you the exact date. I don't think that anyone is even challenging the substitution.
I don't get that impression. I think we were challenging the appearance
Addition of
Mr.
the
DeLuise
name.
on the ballot, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
It's about the name on the ballot.
Can
That's
I-
what the whole case is about.
When you say the whole case, Nick, so just so I understand, is it your position that the withdrawn candidate's name should have remained on that ballot? Whose name should be in if everyone in this room agrees that the proper nominee, properly selected by the Ward 4 committee was Mr. DeLuise? No question, not even asserting any question to that. And he is the known candidate for the office. Is it your client's position that it would be better that the voter not know his name on the ballot?
Which vote, which candidate? You mean
Mr. DeLuise.
the?
You've come to
that's-
this board saying that
Oh, all right. I
Mr.
understand.
DeLuise is the appropriate Democratic nominee for the office of Ward 4 of this council seat, but I don't understand what you're saying with respect to what the voter should see on the ballot.
Oh, well, the 17-15-38 says that if your predecessor's dead, then you can get on the ballot.
But the
if
correl-
not, you can't.
But
It
the
doesn't say you can't.
corollary is not equally true, is it? Which is that if you don't die, you can't be put on the ballot. Why do you read that into the statute?
Council
Mr.
Tavares.
Mr.
I,
Madam Chair, I had one request.
Yes,
If you might consider, given that we have a large audience as well, perhaps we could put the full statute on so that the audience could see it as well, Madam Chair. And I would also just say, from our position, again, if at any point you want to know the Secretary's position, we certainly will state that. But perhaps the full statute would be helpful for everyone to be able to read, given that we're referencing it so much, if possible.
I would not want to delay the proceeding if that's going to be needed. I don't know if we have the
Well, they can
ability
work
to
on
do that. Do we? I mean,
we don't have
is
to
it,
wait while they do it. It might eventually
Okay.
get on.
I don't know how
Okay
easy
with
it is
that.
to pull that up, but I'd like to,
I trust that the board knows about the statute.
they know about the statute, and
Yeah.
I've provided it, you've provided it, so
Yeah.
carry on. Tell us
Okay.
why.
What was your
Just-
question? Oh,
I
because.
see, okay.
Because
He should be the write-in.
he should have been a write-in, and it's not
Even
just-
though you're coming to this board saying that he was the proper Democratic nominee because he was properly substituted for Mr.
Right,
Penta,
but you're
he should be a
positing-
write-in.
You're positing, you're making a huge
I'm
assumption
just,
there that it's
I
not in
just,
the general
I just
laws.
want your argument. I just want to
Okay,
understand
all
it.
right. This is all the general laws on elections. There is nothing in here that says that the Democrat, Republican, whatever nominee to replace a non-dead candidate gets on the ballot. It is simply not in here. What is in here is if your predecessor dies, you get on the ballot. That's it. It's pure and simple, black and white. It's the first document at the very top of what I handed out today. And so it's very clear. And that's and look, I spent 10 years in the General Assembly. They posit all the time that people are going to understand their laws, and they're not always well-written.
Does the secretary wish to state something?
Madam
on the
Chair,
record?
if I could just ask
Yes.
one
Of
question
course.
to Mr. Gorham?
Yes,
Where
sure.
does it say that the secretary is not allowed to modify the ballot and put it on?
The Secretary of State,
Correct.
where does it say that the
The
Secretary?
statute that you're referencing
Yeah.
talks about a candidate dying, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
because
Where in that statute does it say the secretary can't take the action that they took in this case?
because the law about elections is in Title 17, and the Secretary of State is merely an executive officer. The Secretary of State must follow the law. They don't have the discretion to put people on the ballot when they're not replacing someone who is
Counsel,
when they're not replacing someone who is deceased. They
Counsel,
don't have that authority.
in looking at the statute says, and I'm reading from the highlighted portion that you highlighted
Yes.
for us. And if in case of the death of a nominee, time will permit, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the decision ballot, correct?
Right.
Okay, on the election ballot, sorry. it says shall, correct? So in the event that somebody dies, the Secretary of State is required by law to place that name on the ballot,
Doesn't-
correct?
Yes, that's right.
That's what it says.
Yes.
There's nothing in here that says the Secretary of State may not put another substituted name on the ballot, is there?
The Secretary of State's job okay.
Is
you're
there
right,
or not?
There's nothing that proscribes it. But
Okay.
I do not think that the Secretary of State has the authority to transcend the law, which they are supposed to follow.
I'll bet Mr. Tavares has a different opinion.
You know?
If I may
he
be
might-
heard.
Mr. Tavares.
I want to be very clear. Secretary Amori's position is very straightforward, and that's we acted absolutely consistently with the law. I requested, and I appreciate the board's courtesy of putting that up so that everyone here can read along with it. And if you would allow me, I would like to read through this, only about 4 sentences. Whenever the nominee of a party, whether dead or alive, it doesn't say dead or alive, whenever the nominee of a party, right, so for a particular officer dies after the primary or removes him or herself from the jurisdiction of or as a candidate for the office for which the nominee seeks election or becomes physically or mentally disabled, the state committee of that party or a duly authorized subcommittee of the state committee, in the case of state officers, and the appropriate city, town, ward, or district committee or any duly authorized subcommittee of them in the case of candidates for other offices covered by 1715-7 may file with the appropriate authority the name of its nominee for the office. Then it has a provision that says, provided that except in the case of death, okay, the appropriate committee shall file the name with the appropriate authority no later than 4 p.m. of the third day following the last day for the holding of the primaries. And I want to say one thing here. Now, this is my interpretation. When it says provided for, right, provided that except in the case of death, that means in the case of death, you can file it later. You can actually file it later.
Right.
You can file it later because we're going to have a separate, that's why I say provided in the case of death, that except in the case of death, you have to file it there. So if it's not a case of death, you got to get it there 3 days before. In the case of death, that's a little bit different, obviously, because it's God's will, okay? So, and provided further that any appointed nominee shall have been eligible for the nomination on the dates as required by and pursuant to the requirements of 1714-11, 1714-2, and 1714-21. That addresses this issue about declarations. You got to be eligible. Can't just be appointed. The person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office, comma, and if in the case of death of a nominee time will permit, comma, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot. Those commas are there for a very simple reason. We know from the sentence before that if the candidate has died, even if that name is given 3 days after, you shall accept it. And if time permits, the next sentence tells us, in the case of death, if time permits, do it. In other cases, when they did it within the first 3 days, which is what happened here, you shall do that. And if you have any doubt, you can strike out that comma, those 2 commas, and the sentence is still a complete sentence. It makes total sense. There's an exception for the case of death, and that is that you can file it after 3 days, and you better do everything as secretary to put the name on the ballot if you can. That's what it says. You read statutes, and certainly we do, and you have able counsel, and we have counsel there. We read statutes in their entirety. We make sure that they make sense and make them be consistent. That's what the Secretary Amori did in this case. That's why the nomination was accepted from Mr. DeLuise, who he does not know, and neither do I, but it was accepted. It was placed on the ballot. The ballots, and I want to say when Ms. Miller and Mr. Dino said that they reached out, they absolutely did. The ballots were on their way, as they should have been, okay? As they should have been to the printer to make sure that they were there. And in fact, we believe we acted consistently then. We believe we acted consistently now. However, you, as the Board of Elections, have the right to review this, and certainly the Supreme Court has a right to review that, and we will abide by whatever decision the board reaches.
And Mr. Tavares, on that point of the sending out this information to the printer, can you share with the board and the public what the purpose would be for doing that as soon as possible?
Well, I'm going
No,
to
you
answer
let him answer the
Mr.
question.
Marcaccio's question, and then I'll follow whatever the board says. Certainly, we have obligations to comply with federal law that requires us to get ballots to military men and women who are serving overseas, and citizens who live overseas are required to get ballots from the Secretary of State with a time limit. Mr. Secretary Amori, as I know this committee, this board does as well, because we had another issue earlier this year, takes that very, very seriously to make sure that they have those ballots in time to review them, to execute them, to vote them, and to return them back. So that was part of complying with the UOCAVA federal law that requires us to send it to our men and women in service and American citizens living overseas. And we complied with that.
I'm sorry, I have a question. You had mentioned that when you were reading it off, you mentioned that someone can't just be appointed, they have to be also declared, which I assume is candidacy.
No.
Can you repeat what you said? I'm sorry.
Sure, I'm sorry, Mr. Tadino. What I said, or what I believe I said, to be clear, is I referenced back, I read the statute, but I also referenced back to some of your, Mr. Gorham's argument. And I believe one of the arguments was that there was not a declaration paper. And what I'm saying to you is the way we read the statute and what it says is that the person has to be qualified, right? And must have been eligible, I'm sorry, I want to read it directly. The appointed nominee shall have been eligible for the nomination. Shall have been eligible for on the dates as required by. In other words, whoever was appointed or named by the committee, you can't just pick anyone. It has to be someone who would have been eligible at the time of the declarations. So that's what I mean.
May I please speak for?
There's no proof of that because he never filed a declaration of candidacy. And that is something we discovered today.
Doesn't say the law, I think it doesn't say that
Madam
he
Chair.
has to. Yes, sir. We
I
haven't.
apologize for interrupting. I let
No,
it
you're-
breathe a little bit, if you will, but I need to, if I could, try to focus the board back on what I thought we were focusing on, which is whether or not this complaint, as it's been filed, is time barred. Okay? And that was one of my points of my motion to dismiss. And again, I did talk to Mr. Gorham yesterday with the express statement that I do not wish to surprise anybody, and I would like to talk to you about it now. And we did. We talked for length while I drove and did not have case law in front of me. We talked through all of the points you find in there. And again, he's submitted an affidavit today that when we're all working as fast as we can on this, and me on the defensive on behalf of Mr. DeLuise. But if I may, I'll be brief on this time bar issue because it ties into all of this, including this latest revelation today. That, again, another last-minute attempt here. So if the board were to find it has jurisdiction, again, if you get to the rest of my motion to dismiss, I argue you don't even have jurisdiction to hear this today. But you would still need to dismiss this complaint as time barred by raising the challenge. Ultimately, the filing occurred after the election. And because I happened to be here that day of the recount, it was filed during the recount, the original handwritten letter. Okay? Section 1714.13 provides a time for filing written objections to be made, 4 p.m. on the next business day after the challenge action occurs. That's for challenging any qualifications of a candidate to be on the ballot. That's 1714.13. It typically deals with nomination papers, but it's broader than that. 4 p.m. on the next business day. Section 1715.38A provides a time for filing substitute nominees. Again, 4 p.m. on the third business day following the primary election. No attempt was made by Ms. Miller to file any kind of objection, with the appropriate authority prior to the election. Even if the board were to grant a reasonable amount of time after the filing deadline for the substituting nominees under 1715.38A, the board found it had jurisdiction to do so, after the election has occurred cannot be considered reasonable. At the very least, if you don't want to search and strain the the statutes of the general laws of the state, the doctrine of laches applies to this matter. Simply put, laches is a legal doctrine that prevents a claimant from bringing a legal claim or enforcing a right if the claimant has unreasonably delayed in doing so. Unreasonably delayed in doing so. The doctrine is based on the idea that equity should favor the vigilant, not the negligent. Here, by waiting until after the election has occurred, after the votes have been counted and recounted, and after Ms. Miller has lost, it would be inequitable to wit disenfranchising the majority of the voters in Ward 5 of the city of Warwick to grant the relief sought. That inequity would result from Ms. Miller's sought relief of redoing an election with the wrong name or no name on the ballot has to be barred under the doctrine of laches. I can speak to all of the rest of the substantive arguments that I've made today, but I would prefer to circle back to this is time barred. We've been at this an hour to try to at least get that issue settled one way or the other.
I don't know what is going on. Okay. I sat here and I did not file this after the recount. I filed it because I found the board here and asked if I could speak to them and was not able to get any response before this. So I was allowed to do that on that day. It was not after the recount, so it wasn't after I lost again. I sat here and I watched you very fairly, this whole board. I was quite surprised in a good way. You spoke of your plenary powers, Attorney Marsoci, because somebody had purportedly won an election at a certain time of the night and the election was over. And so the loser had filed a paperwork to do a recount. After midnight, it switched. The opposing candidate was ahead, and the person who was losing had now outrun the time frame for filing for a recount. You used your plenary powers, and you stood by because both candidates were called, and both candidates agreed. The woman who is now ahead said, yes, it's okay for him to ask for a recount. I won't object to it. Because she wanted to win fair and square. And so you use your plenary powers to bypass the time frame and allow this to happen. You also said that there were regulatory things that when I called, you said it in response to Mr. Giacofone, I did not receive, or did anybody get back to me regarding those regulatory, whatever you want to call them, regulations that you could have informed me of. Lastly, so how could I obey your time frame when nobody responded to me? Lastly, I want to just say, when in reading this law, and I'd like to put my question to you, sir, from Greg Amore's office. You said, provided that except in the case of death, that you also too would not have to observe the timeframes in the case of death, right? So, and only in the case of death, you didn't have to observe the timeframes, correct?
Well, to be clear, the General Assembly said that in the statute. And that's what the statute says when you're reading from provided that in the except in the case of death, the appropriate, and you have to read it in the full sentence because what they're talking about is when the appropriate committee can file.
Mhm.
And so it says you can file within 3 days, provided that except in the case of death.
Right, except or only in the case of death, you can bypass those timeframes. Why isn't it down in the sentence where it says the person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office, and if in case of the death of the nominee will permit, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot. Doesn't that also indicate from before the only exception that the Secretary of State, because it's referring back to the exception of when the time frame can be overrun or whatever, that this means that only the death will make it possible for you to
No,
write
ma'am.
in a ballot?
It actually means the opposite, and let me explain why, if I can.
Yes.
If you read the sentence, it says, the person so named, I'm going to read the sentence and I'm going to delete that comma for a second, just so you can see. The person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office, and I'm going to delete that for a second. The secretary shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot, okay? They have an exception to that. In the case of death, if time will permit, you do that, and you do that as well. But
No,
the way
there's no
that,
as well there. There's
no,
just
no,
only
it says,
in the case of death.
and if in the case of death, time will permit. So, and if in the case of death, time doesn't permit, you don't place the name on. You can give the name of the replacement in the case of death, even after the time limit. And if the time permits, you put the name on the ballot. But for everyone else, you have to meet the time limit, and we put the name on the ballot.
But death is in that sentence. There's nothing, you
Okay.
can't
Excuse
take
me,
out that
can-
clause.
Madam Chair, if I may. I believe we've heard from all the parties involved. We know there was some discussions prior to the election regarding the issue. There was no formal complaint filed until after. So I'd like to make a motion to dismiss this complaint as untimely.
I will second the motion.
We have a motion to dismiss and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Oh, Commissioner?
Well, thank you. I'm struggling a little bit with the timeliness because I'm worried here that we're setting a precedent that like every little Byzantine portion of the rules can prevent somebody. So if you, let's say I'm just a person that's not involved in politics and I want to run, and we're putting so many rules in place that it makes that entry into that impossible without, no offense, attorneys and party official, like it worries me. So however, I do find, I'll just say this, I do find Attorney Tavares's argument compelling, and I would say that I'd be fine to dismiss it, however, but only on the fact that I don't think that the actual, the actual complaint has merits on the way that Attorney Tavares explained it. So, thank you.
Just a comment. Do you wish to make an alternative motion? Or do we have to?
Well, do you have a motion and a
Yeah,
second?
sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's, yep.
Let's move the motion.
Sorry.
So remove the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No. The ayes have it.
Thank you for even hearing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 2, the board will review and vote on deficient ballots for the general election of Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, that have not been cured by voters. Excuse me, do you mind? Thank you. Yeah, they're cutting in and out, kind of.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Before you now, I am going to present to you deficient mail ballots, which were disqualified during our mail ballot certification processes, and for which a voter was mailed a notice, and if they had signed up for electronic notification through our ballot track service, they would have received a text message, an email or a voice call indicating that their mail ballot had been deemed deficient. Before we get into each of the individual signatures, I'd like to point out to you first that we have 15 mail ballots here in which the voters did not actually place a signature on the ballot. There are 15 here, if anyone would like to see them, but essentially, they are all, have no signature. So based on the regulations, and Ray agrees, these are facially deficient, and in what we've done traditionally in practice, according to the reg, is these are deemed void at the beginning of the process.
Thanks,
There should be a
Miguel.
motion on that.
There should, yes, and because they're all identical, the same lack of the signature, they can be dealt with as a group. You have the information from the director saying that each one is lacking that signature. The board, of course, has a right to see that. And if they don't wish to see that, then they could vote on the whole group in that fashion. They don't need a separate vote.
I'll make a motion to reject all of the deficient ballots based on a lack of signature, the
Second.
15, I believe it was.
Yes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
And before we begin, I would just like to point out that the certification of the 2024 general election results is last on this agenda item. However, any ballots in which you approve in this portion of the meeting, we will have to have the staff open them and tabulate them through our high-speed counters. So after we finish this process, the staff will do that while the meeting continues. So hopefully by the time we get to the final agenda item, they can provide us with a new report, final report, which will be what the board will certify for the 2024 general election. The first signature that we have before you today is from Gloria Golden. On the left, you see her mail ballot signature, and on the right, you see every signature in which we have in the central voter registration system. I will note that this was a special case in Cranston, which was brought to our attention from the City of Cranston Board of Canvassers, in which Mrs. Golden is 98 years old. Her deficiency notice, because our teams here during the certification processes did disqualify her ballot and deemed it deficient because the signature did not match. In fact, her deficiency notice was mailed to the local board of canvassers because she cast an emergency ballot during the early voting period because she did not have appropriate identification at the time to vote during the early voting period. So she did cast an emergency ballot in front of the local board and the local board of canvassers officials. However, her mailing address was listed in the central voter registration system as the local board of canvassers, not her home address. So her deficiency notice was actually mailed to the local board, and they did not have enough time to get that to her and for her to return that to us by the deadline, which was November 12th, 2024 at 4 p.m. So the local board has asked this board to consider this approved if possible, because her effort to go through the process of casting the mail ballot early, and then also she was not aware of the deficiency notice because it did go to the Board of Canvassers.
Madam Chair, just for the director, so this woman cast this ballot at the local board?
Yes.
I would suggest that we move approval. I would move approval.
Second.
Ballot.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Approved.
The next ballot is from Norman Enrique Calendres Rodriguez. The ballot signature is on the left, and the three latest signatures are on the right. Those appear to be electronic signatures from the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Motion to reject. Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
And just to note, that was the second of 113 that we'll be reviewing today. The third here is from Patrice Fenton. Her signature is on the left, and The signatures on file are on the right.
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next is for Nikaya Walker, signature on the left, and the electronic signature from the Central Voter Registration System on the right.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes
No.
have it. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Going a little speedy.
Sorry, I understand.
4 ayes and 1 no.
Next is for Natalie Eliza V. Dunkia.
Motion to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
The next signature is for Natalie C. Duboisen.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Motion, moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Betty Kizito.
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor.
I'm sorry, just as a comment, just
no,
to
of
make it
course.
clear, it's tough to
Please.
see maybe up on the screen, but now I have it up on my tablet here. It's kind of, the one on the right is very squished, but if you look into it, you can see, to me, the B is the same, which gives me a good indication that it's just because of the electronic poll. I'm sorry, the electronic pad that they signed on. Thank you. That was
We have it.
a motion to
Yeah.
approve.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for David J. Montefusco. That appears to be a wet signature on the right.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Luis A. Rodriguez. 2 digital signatures.
Motion to reject. Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Namrata Timsina.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Sorry. Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Maria Torres.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by,
Chairwoman,
sorry,
I have a
yes, sir.
question. Is it my imagination or is the signature on the left say Janet?
I thought the same.
I'm so I wanted to just be sure before we vote on this one. Is
Yes.
that, was there maybe a mismatch on the?
There was no, I'm sorry, Robert, mail ballots. They definitely, we looked into it and it was just sent in with the wrong signature.
Okay, thank you.
That was Rob Quinn for coordinates the mail ballot operation.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Rob.
Miguel. So it was moved and seconded to reject with comment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature from Michael Shane Taylor. Appears to be a wet signature at the bottom there.
Motion to reject. Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Kyle D. Russell.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature for Edward Roland Peon.
Move to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature from Maximilian Colbe Bonici.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Paul John Griswold.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature Samantha Bell Shore.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Alexander David De Tomasis.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Dobrita Radu.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Aiden Mason Summer.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Veronica Mary Milsom.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next signature Angel Sue Hall.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature Victoria K. Grady.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next signature for Douglas C. Bama.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Roy Gerald Hines.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. And that was to reject, Madam Secretary? To reject. I didn't say that up front this time, sorry.
Next signature is for Sergey Wasu.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for David Cardwell Asomar Taylor.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Maria L. Lorero Lewis.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature for Michael David Rosenberg.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by
I'm
saying
sorry.
aye. Oh,
I
yes,
just have a
sir.
question. Again, this is another one on the one on the right. It does look like Michael, but it looks like Mulvey, or it doesn't look, so I don't know if anyone could comment on this particular one. Is it the correct signature? I'm sure it's the correct signature, but why
Rob?
there might be a difference.
Come to believe it, a lot of the most current signatures are DMV fingerprints,
Ah,
and so they are becoming
Poor.
increasingly more sloppy.
okay, thank you.
Moved and seconded to reject, right?
Did we vote?
Yes, was it
Did we
moved and
vote?
seconded? No, we
Yes.
didn't yet. We
need
didn't
to
vote
vote.
all the way, I don't think. We did?
We didn't vote.
Oh, we did.
Sorry,
You're
I
saying
was
we did.
waving my
Okay,
hand.
moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Francis D. Silvera.
Oh, dear.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Jordan Elizabeth Raftery.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Shane Michael Jedson.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Shauna M. Dunbar.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Sarah G. Hirsch.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Under comment, I would just say, if you look at the S, that's what makes me believe it's the same signature, particularly on the top right-hand signature.
I believe all the S's are consistent.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
That was approved.
That was an approval.
Yes.
Yes.
Did I say that?
That's 5.
Did I say?
No, I'm.
Oh.
Next, signatures for Caroline Julia Hirsch.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Lindsay M. Hill.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Madison L. Lambert.
Motion to reject.
Second.
There's a motion to reject and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Matters rejected.
Next, signatures for Mark W. Bredheft.
Motion to reject.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to reject, I believe. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Matters rejected.
Next, signatures for Trent Christopher Olet.
Motion to reject.
Second.
There's a motion and second to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Any opposed?
Next, signatures for Derek R. Bergeron.
Motion to reject.
So
Second.
just a question, Director, the signature on the right appears to be a paper signature
Yes.
probably from canvases, is that?
That is the scan of the paper voter registration form, yes.
So there's a motion to reject and a second, is that
Second.
correct? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it, matter is rejected.
Next, signatures for Luke Bork Klump.
Motion to reject.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, signature is for Rafael M. Hernandez.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, signatures for Molly Elizabeth Rice.
Motion to reject.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Matter is rejected.
Next, signatures for Isabella Pazaretta.
I guess I have a question on this one before there's a motion. It appears to me that the signature on the left, which is from the mail ballot, says Bella Nasser. So I don't know if Ms. Passaretta is married, and I don't know if we would know that, obviously, or be reflected in our system. Thank you.
Do you want to hold this one and just go on to the next?
You can hold it.
Thank you.
We're holding Passaretta.
Okay.
For some further information, and I think the director's going to go on to the next.
Correct.
Thank you.
Next signature is Javier Torres Trinidad.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is Kofi B. Bannerman Martin.
Motion to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Harrison Joseph Spar.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Isabel Lisette Echeverry.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Chloe Danielle Silva.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is from Melina Wanda Neves.
Motion to reject. Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Hazel Bacani Lebec.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Isabella Pinto Miranda Aaron.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Dayton A. Ferment.
Motion to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Kyra Michelle Meehan.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Theda Francisca Kaczynski.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Phaedra Sophia DeLeo.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm a no. Ayes have it.
Next signature for Henry Taiwo Adenican.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Director, can I just ask one other question? Again, the signature at the top on the right-hand side is a
Scanned,
signature?
scan, yeah, from a voter registration form.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Aiden Hayes.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Jack H. Sipperly.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
No.
One opposed, the ayes have it.
Next signatures for Carolina Alzati.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Could I just, for the last one, Jack Sipley, was that an accept?
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. Next signatures for David Timothy Kyron Bradley.
Motion to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Reject, correct?
Yeah.
That was a rejection.
Yes.
Next signatures for Maya Lindiwe Fletcher.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
That was a reject.
Accept.
That was an accept.
Next signatures for Luis E. Galvis.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Thomas Anthony Monticello.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Stephen G. McDonald.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Jessica Sarah Mendonca.
Motion to accept.
Are you looking at the M, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I'll second it for discussion. So is it just the M that you're looking at, Commissioner? Because I'm just trying to see what, I'm looking at the J as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't look.
Yeah, well, so definitely the M, it appears to me on the right, on the signature on file, that Ms. Mendonca had only put her initials. She's printed her name on the left, so, but it's the M that really sort of, that's why I think we should accept it.
Well, I mean, I seconded it, so.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm a no.
No.
You're a no.
And those.
Three noes.
So they should-
So then,
Do we need a motion to reject as well? Right, or
Since that motion didn't pass, yes.
do I have another motion?
somebody else has to make it, 'cause I was on.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Two opposed. The ayes have it.
That was to reject, correct?
Rejected.
Next signatures for Rafaela Santana.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have another question on this one. The bottom signature
Looks like Holman,
looks like it's a different
last name.
last name.
What's
And
the,
that's a paper signature, right?
Correct. It has the same first
Could we
name.
have gotten that, like, could they have made a mistake when they sent it to us?
Could be a married,
Only because the last name looks different. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would
Well,
move.
hold on it.
I would join with my commissioners, but I'm just a little concerned about.
we'll hold on that one. then
Rob
to
can
get some
grab
more.
it.
The reason I suggested approving is because
I think you're
the
right.
first name looks
yeah,
I mean, I think-
almost
I think
precisely a
you're right.
match.
My
so-
only concern is that we're working off potential wrong leads.
Okay.
But I-
Well,
I
if we're gonna
think
get
you're
more
right.
information.
Rob's gonna grab it, yeah.
So if we could hold that one. All right.
Yes, hold that. Just give me a second. Okay. Next signatures for Benjamin Pondfield Stone.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
The next signature is for Christian Mendez.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
The next signature is for Joel D. Foster.
Motion to reject.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Jose S. Sanchez.
Motion to reject.
Second to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Isidro A. Rojas Peña.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Anna Michelle Cronin Foreman. There's a paper signature at the, wet signature at the bottom there.
I mean, I'll move to reject because it doesn't look like a signature to me. But
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Josefina Antonia Volquez Perez.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have, one opposed. The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Nervaline Pierre Lewis.
I'll move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm a no. Did you vote aye? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Elizabeth Pauline Lanata.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
No.
One opposed. The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Pascal I. Aguacha.
Why does that say?
What does the
Do-
DP signify?
That just means that they were issued a duplicate ballot because their original may have been destroyed, damaged, or lost. So they can be issued a duplicate by the local board. But we only count the duplicate.
And again, the lower right signature is from a scan from a paper signature, not a
Correct.
wet signature.
Yes, that looks like an older one too.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Junia Genevieve Javier.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Christopher John Corazzini.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve.
For discussion,
Yes,
the
please.
C here, if you look at the top of the C, where it comes down, it just, I can zoom in here on my tablet, but it's got the same extra, I guess, a little to the left at the end, so. At least on the wet signature, sorry, not the wet signature, the electronic signature on the top.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No.
One opposed. The ayes have it.
Next signatures for Avery Newton Seeley.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Andrew James Hines.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Stacy May Dundee.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Joseph Leclerc.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Adeyanka Oluwafemi Ajayi.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Nicholas Kakrona Ung.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Rodolfo B. Ramos.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Angel Roque.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
That was approved, correct?
Yes.
Next signatures for Carolina Isabel Battle Cardamil.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signatures for Colin David Wagner Geoffrey.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Accept.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Accepted.
Next signatures for Sophia Renee Stogner.
Motion to reject.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Signature rejected.
Next signatures for Malachi Spencer Gray.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Accepted.
Next signatures for Eve G. Zeman.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Rejected.
Next signatures for Nana Yor B. Jemaya.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Tucker Joseph Malloy.
To the chair, I do wanted to make a note on this one. I happen to know Mr. Malloy. I worked with his father for a number of years. For the record, I did text a picture of this to his father, who then confirmed to his son, who's at college, that this was indeed his signature. And in fact, he said, my signature has evolved, I believe was the exact quote that he gave me. So I'm confident this is the correct, even though it may not look that way. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Signature approved.
Next signature is for Brian M. Lynch.
Motion to reject?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Rejected.
Next signature is for Terry A. Wright.
Do we know what the signature on the lower right is?
That is definitely a Department of Motor Vehicle signature.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Approved.
Next signature is Gary Michael Choquette.
Motion to reject? Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Rejected.
Next signature is for Caitlin Hunter Pucci.
Motion to reject?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Rachel Thomas DeAngelis.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Christopher R. Wright.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Signature approved.
Next signature is for Casey Ann Merkel.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One no, and signature is rejected.
Next signature is for Kathleen A. Giblin.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Think.
Next signature is for Quinn Antonacci.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Signature accepted.
Next signature is for Kensley Hawkins.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Tyler Bradford Stanton.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Rejected.
Next signature is for Benjamin Michael Ruggieri.
Mm-mm.
I'm going to move to reject that. I mean, I don't see it. Somebody can convince me otherwise, but-
Commissioner Connors, were you going to say something? We have comment.
I was gonna make a motion to approve based on.
I'm willing, what do you think?
That backstroke.
Which one?
If you look
Yeah.
at the end of the signature, how
Okay.
they, all three of them.
I'm willing to defer, Commissioner. I didn't see it, but I'm willing to defer if you're gonna make the motion.
I see that.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Signature approved.
Next signatures for Adam L. Lucy.
Motion to accept?
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Signature accepted.
Next signatures for Claire L. Morse.
Looks like there's just an X there.
Yeah.
Can you pull that one out here? So you have it?
So is that a mark?
It is a mark, and I did research into her voter record, and all her signatures are perfectly like the ones on the right. There has never been evidence of her signing with an X, as been allowed in previous elections.
Yeah, where there's no assistant was provided, correct? And we have the ballot here if you needed to see it, but on the back is the assistant line.
So there wasn't no assistance?
No assistance needed, no request of mail ballot because of illness, none of those apply.
Motion to reject.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
The next signature is for James A. Russell Jr.
The bottom.
Bottom.
Yeah, it's almost identical.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Leanne Marie Biancani.
Motion to reject?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for David E. Perry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next signature is for Ryan Dunlap. This signature was originally ruled deficient because we had no signature on file for Ryan. However, we were able to get the signature from the local boards of canvassers after the certification.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
And the next signature is for Devin K. Price. Again, this is a similar situation as the last one.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
So we'll return to slide 42 or 43
It's right there on the bottom of the page.
to Derek, I believe it was, excuse me, Isabella Passaretta.
So upon research of the record, there is no further information to give you other than her signatures.
There it is.
There is no further evidence to give any update to this record. It's just basically what's presented.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
And the second signature, which was held for review,
Slide 69.
slide 69, Rafaela Santana.
So the voter's record of
yeah.
the Rafaela Roman was signed in 1988. She is currently 89 years old, and so the Santana might just be something that she's signing now. We called the city hall. They provided us both records, and this is what they came up with.
Motion to approve?
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
And that completes our review
Thank
of the
you, Rob.
deficient mail ballots.
Thanks, Rob.
I will now give this to Rob, who will go and open any of those that you approved, and they will be run through our high-speed tabulators, and in a few minutes, he'll come back with a new report for final certification at the end of the meeting.
While we're here, I'd like to thank Rob for.
Yeah,
all
thank you,
his
Rob.
tracking down and background work, because I did work with him the other day, and he's very thorough.
Yes, he is. Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate it. So we can.
I'm not sure if anyone wants to take a break, or we've been 2 hours in.
Does anyone need a little break, gentlemen?
Okay, just making sure.
Carry on. Carry on. Agenda item number 3, the board.
What?
Oh, we can't, wait, this is the recounts. Vote
Do
to
any
certify-
of these
oh,
affect the recounts? Some of those
Should we
could
do
affect the
the-
recounts, right?
No, we did those last week for
Okay.
the recounts.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Agenda item number 3, the board may vote to certify the results of the recounts from the November 5th, 2024 general election conducted on Thursday, November 4th, 2024, and Friday, November 15th, 2024. And just want to thank all the members of the board staff and board members who came out, and the many volunteers that I know spent a lot of time doing the risk limiting audit. And thanks, as always, to John Marion, who birthed this process, and really proud that we do it.
All right. Good afternoon, almost good evening, members of the board. On Thursday, November 14th, the board authorized the staff to conduct 6 refeed recounts and 1 reread recount. The staff conducted 4 manual refeed recounts on November 14th and 2 manual refeed recounts on November 15th, as well as 1 reread recount on November 15th. As you know, a refeed recount is considered when the ballots go back through the voting equipment to be tabulated, and we do use our high-speed tabulators to conduct the recounts. A reread is a rereading of the electronic media, in which the media is loaded back into our election management systems, and the new results are generated a second time. Today, I will present to you the results of these 7 recounts. On the screen today, you'll see the results for the first recount for Representative District 15 between Christopher Paplauskas and Maria Bucci, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Christopher Paplauskas received a total of 4,341 votes, and after the recount, received 4,343 votes. Maria Bucci, at the conclusion of the election, received 4,319 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 4,317 votes. Based on the recount results, Christopher Paplauskas remains the winner. At this time, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Representative District 15.
Motion to certify the results of Rep 15.
Second.
Described.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
For the Representative District 21 contest between Marie Hopkins and James McElroy, who was the requester, at the conclusion of the election, Marie Hopkins received a total of 3,568 votes, and after the recount, received 3,576 votes. James McElroy, at the conclusion of the election, received 3,483 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 3,485 votes. Based on the recount results, Marie Hopkins remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Representative District 21.
We have a motion to certify the results for the recount for Representative District 21. Or or further comment or
I
question?
just have one question,
Sure.
Director. When it comes time to put down the official votes, what number do you put down, the original vote or the recount vote?
We will not include the recount results directly in our results page, but we have a separate section of our website for recounts in which all of this documentation is present to differentiate between the recount and election night.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Move to certify Rep. 21.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
For the next recount, Senate District 29, the contest between Peter Apollonio Jr. and Anthony DeLuca, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Peter Apollonio Jr. received a total of 6,849 votes, and after the recount, received 6,841 votes. Anthony DeLuca, at the conclusion of the election, received 6,784 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 6,797 votes. Based on the recount results, Peter Apollonio Jr. remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Senate District 29.
Move to certify the results of the recount.
Second.
Moved and seconded to certify. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next, for the Warwick City Council Ward 4 contest between Salvatore DeLuise and Joanne Miller, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Salvatore DeLuise received a total of 2,314 votes, and after the recount, received 2,314 votes. Joanne Miller, at the conclusion of the election, received 2,261 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 2,262 votes. Based on the recount results, Salvatore DeLuise remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Warwick City Council Ward 4.
Move to certify the results.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, for the Woonsocket City Council contest between Christina A. Fox and Shabazz Raja, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Christina A. Fox received a total of 3,922 votes, and after the recount, received 3,930 votes. Shabazz Raja, at the conclusion of the election, received 3,908 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 3,914 votes. Based on the recount results, Christina A. Fox remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Woonsocket City Council.
Motion to certify Woonsocket City Council race.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, for the Barrington Town Council contest between Brian Hughes and Jordan Jankosek, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Jordan Jankosek received a total of 4,447 votes, and after the recount, received 4,453 votes. Brian Hughes, at the conclusion of the election, received 4,438 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 4,442 votes. Based on the recount results, Jordan Jankosek remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for Barrington Town Council.
I make a motion to certify the results of the recount for the Barrington Town Council.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
And finally, for the Richmond Town Council contest between Jeffrey Dinsmore and Michael Calasante, who was the requester. At the conclusion of the election, Jeffrey R. Dinsmore received a total of 1,989 votes, and after the recount, which was a rereading of the electronic media, received the same 1,989 votes. Michael Colasante, at the conclusion of the election, received 1,910 votes, and after the recount, received a total of 1,910 votes. Based on the recount results, Jeffrey Dinsmore remains the winner. Therefore, I request the board certify the results of the recount for the Richmond Town Council, and this concludes my request for certification of the recount results for the 2024 general election.
Motion to certify the Richmond Town Council recount.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And I just want to note, I pre-thanked everyone for the RLA because I had it on the brain. I'd like to post-thank everyone for all the work that went into hearing and deciding and then conducting the recounts. Agenda item number 4, the board will receive the results from the risk limiting audit conducted on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, and Wednesday, November 20th, 2024.
Good afternoon, members of the board. On November 19th and 20th, the staff conducted the post-election risk limiting audit of the 2024 general election. The audit targeted the contest of President of the United States and, for the first time, another contest, Representative District 28 in Coventry. And these were the contests selected by the board at your meeting held on November 13th. The audit is required under Rhode Island General Law 1719-37.4. It was conducted in conjunction with the organization Verified Voting, in which we also utilize an audit software called Arlo, which is developed by the organization Voting Works. The official dice roll conducted on November 18th generated a 20-digit random seed that was generated and entered into the Arlo software. The dice roll was live streamed on YouTube. Creating these batches, of course, as you know, requires careful planning and coordination amongst the staff prior to Election Day. For the precinct and early voting batches, the batch is equal to 1 DS200. So, for example, if a precinct had more than 1 DS200, we label one DS200A and the other DS200B. We give these labels to the Board of Canvassers, which contain the assigned precinct number and the A or B designation, so they can label them appropriately. Poll workers are instructed during their training how important it is to remove the labels from each DS200 and place them into the appropriately labeled ballot storage box and sealed. The same procedure was used by the Board of Canvassers for their early voting machines, if multiple DS200 tabulators were used. For mail ballots, during tabulation, we tried to create batches of 700 ballots in size by city and town when possible. However, batch sizes for our mail ballots can be as small as 1 mail ballot in the batch, if necessary. Each mail ballot batch is labeled and recorded with a unique identifier. We seal a batch report on the inside of the box containing the ballot. We also tape a batch report to the outside of that box, and we also keep a separate copy in a binder for reference later on in order to conduct both recounts and the risk limiting audits. Upon completion of the tabulation of mail ballots, the staff manually records each unique batch identifier onto a manifest of ballots, which is published to our website and is there currently in our audit center. And that is merged with a manifest of batches created for each DS200 in the precincts in early voting. A total of 830 batches exist on the manifest, which were created, with an additional, with 13 batches from precincts being selected for the president, vice president audit. An additional 5 batches were selected for, 21 batches were selected, 21 batches in total were selected, 9 of which were from the mail ballots, 13 were from election day, and 3 were from the early voting sessions. For Rep 28, the manifest included 14 batches selected, 7 from the election day voting, 6 from mail ballots, and 1 from early voting. The audits commenced at 9 a.m. on Tuesday and took approximately 2 days to complete. 35 individuals participated in the audit, including 9 full-time staff, 18 temporary employees, and 3 staff on hand who flew in from verified voting, and 5 local boards of canvassers. Now, during the audit, the batch audit, each batch is divided into portions, which we call piles, consisting of approximately 100 ballots, which we use a precision scale to measure. Each pile was then distributed to each one of the 12 audit pairs seated at tables. Originally, we started with 10 pairs, and we did increase that to 12 pairs due to the increased workload. Each time a pair was issued a pile of ballots to tally, it was logged onto an audit sheet. The audit pairs then hand the tallied votes for each candidate for president, hand tallied the votes for president by placing each ballot into labeled stacks on their table, and then tallying the stacks and recording them on a document, which was then returned to the auditor and checked back in. So we always had a chain of custody from the point when the ballots were checked out of the ballot station and checked back in when they were finished being tallied by the pairs. The tally sheet containing the results for each piles were then entered into a document which was projected on a screen in our warehouse, and we also had a live Excel view of the live Excel entry as well. As you know, in the presidential preference primary, one of the points of feedback that we receive is that it was preferable to have both the software on screen and the actual tally sheet being handed to the data entry person while it was being read out, and we were able to accomplish that. We switched to using Zoom instead of YouTube, and that allowed us to both show the physical tally sheet as well as the data being entered into the Excel document. And this document, as I said, was displayed to the public on the live stream to make sure that that data was entered correctly. Ballot polling is slightly different than that, but ballot polling essentially, rather than breaking down all of the batches into batches of 100, we use the software designates certain ballots in that pile to be randomly selected for the audit. So essentially, the basics of it is you can have one pile of all the early voting ballots, and the audit will select 25 ballots to be selected randomly from that pile. So we use a scale to count down to ballot number, ballot number 420, ballot number 375, and we just count down to where that ballot falls in the stack to get a completely random number. Those are put into a container, and a label is affixed to them indicating that what ballot number they are, what contest it is, what ballot number it is, and what batch it is in. And then those are sent by runners out to our tally teams on the floor. They hand tally them, fill out the tally sheets, bring them back to the check-in station, and then that eventually gets into the software as well, which is also live streamed to prevent any errors and to produce the results. The risk limit for this audit was set as 9% by the board, meaning that the audit has met its goal if the results established with 91% likelihood that the outcome of the election results is accurate. The lower the risk limit that is set, the more batches that must be reviewed and tallied, which would also increase the manpower and time necessary to conduct the audit. In the vice president contest, which was audited, 23,360 ballots were hand counted as part of 21 total batches. In the representative district 28 contest, 600 ballots from over 14 batches were counted. At the conclusion of the audit, all hand tally results were entered into the Arlo software, and I am pleased to report to you that we achieved the risk limit of 7.27%, which is less than the 9% limit that we had aimed for the batch comparison audit for president, effectively meaning that the audit proves with over 93% likelihood that if there was an inaccuracy with the tally of votes by our equipment, our audit would have detected it. The ballot polling audit, which again was the first time we had ever audited a second contest since we began doing risk limiting audits in 2018. That audit was for Representative District 28, which covers Coventry. That audit achieved a risk limit of 0.01%, meaning that the audit proves with 99.99% likelihood that if there was an inaccuracy with the tally of votes by our equipment in the Rep 28 district, our audit would have detected it. This means the results of both of these audits surpassed and performed better than the 9% risk limit that the board had set. The results in all relevant documentation regarding both of these audits from start to finish have been posted on our website within our RLA Audit Center for public scrutiny and according to board regulations. A report with additional details will also be published to the Audit Center in several weeks. All mail ballots used to conduct the audit have been returned to their cases and sealed. Precinct and early votings have been sealed and will be returned to their respective Board of Canvassers for storage for 22 months per state law. This concludes my report on the RLA, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Any questions or comments for Miguel? Commissioner
I have a
Schultz?
couple of questions, Miguel. I don't know, can you sort of shed some light on why the rep district risk was 0.1% and the presidential race was 7.27%? Well, how do you account for that?
So the ballot polling audits in general are more accurate per se than batch comparison audits because the sample is much more specific and generally they are more accurate. We just can't do ballot polling audits in Rhode Island in a large race because the volume of ballots that we would have to actually pull from every batch out there would be tremendous and it would take probably weeks to do it. So a batch comparison audit is more in line with how, and which is why the board back in 2018 selected batch comparison as the primary method that we use. It is more conducive to how ballots are cast in tabulators at precincts in Rhode Island.
Now, the results of the RLA, are they transmitted to like verified voting? So they maintain a sort of a master list of all the RLAs across the country?
They do have the results as well, and we do post all of our historical, so all of our results going back to our first official RLA in 2020 for the presidential preference primary, it is on our website. So we do maintain a record on our website going back, including a pilot which we ran, which we didn't have to run, but we were asked if we would run a pilot for a new concept for RLAs in 2023, when we did, and that is also on our website as well.
Yeah, I know Rhode Island is the forefront of doing RLAs. There only a handful of states that do it.
Correct. We do try to push the envelope as much as we can because obviously we have an interest in ensuring that the voting equipment is accurate and functioning the way it should be.
So I congratulate you on a successful RLA.
Thank you. It's appreciated. And I will say that the staff has made a tremendous effort. As you know, we have had a lot of turnover this year. And so for the staff many of the staff members had not conducted an RLA before, other than myself and Jacob. So for new staff to come in and basically learn that process of the RLAs, it just shows how much dedication they have to the elections process.
Thanks, Miguel. Anyone else? Commissioner Connors?
Just one quick question. You mentioned that the mail ballot batches could possibly contain one mail ballot, and then another batch may contain up to 400. I might have that number wrong, but can you just explain why there would be such a variance?
So we don't do that for the RLA. We do that for recounts because we try to separate all of our mail ballot tabulation by city and town whenever possible. So if we have just one ballot for Warwick, let's say, we would just run that Warwick ballot, put it into a box and label it as Warwick. Because if there's a recount in Warwick, as you saw, we had 3 last week, then we would know exactly where that ballot is and we wouldn't have to go through many different boxes. So we just know exactly where all of the Warwick ballots are. So we do that for recount purposes, not for the RLA. And that's been historical for many, many years.
Madam Chair. Just, again, Miguel, I was fortunate enough to take a look at the audit. And I think the most important thing for people to understand, and I know there's no one here now, I wish that people had stayed, but is that those ballots are being physically hand counted by human beings, which is what almost everyone who has a question or a complaint about an election asks for. I mean, I've seen many candidates say, well, why don't we hand count? And the risk limiting audit is a chance where they actually physically hand count without a machine. So I think that's important, and I applaud the work that you guys did on that. My other question is, how comfortable would you be in taking that 9% number down to another number? And you don't have to answer me now. Just in the future.
Coming soon to a meeting near you.
I asked that question. I asked that from
And
our
I'm gonna
partners.
blame John Marion for that, since he's still here.
I asked that question. I believe Commissioner Shows or Commissioner Connors was asked that question at the last meeting, and I did ask that question of our partners, and they said, I asked how many ballots would have had to pull, for example, in the ballot polling if we dropped it to 5%, and they said anything in an order of magnitude is about 30% more. So if you drop it to 5% from 9%, it's 30% more ballots that would have to be pulled. So certainly we would have to factor that in. So instead of 24,000, we would have to pull 31,000 or 32,000. But if we do have the extra time, certainly something that is of interest to us.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I noticed you have a sticker on your computer that
Yes.
says, is that from Mr. Marion?
That is
No.
for verified voting, yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. We could all use one of those, but thanks so much. I concur with what everyone said. I'm proud that we do this, and we'll continue to do it in the future. And should we pause for a minute, or do you have the?
I
The
can go
new-
through my presentation, and hopefully they finished.
Okay.
And then we can, if that's what you want to do, to move it along. It's up
Sure.
to you.
We can have you go through
Okay.
and then we'll hold. Agenda item number 5, the board may vote to certify the results for the November 5th, 2024 general election.
Honorable members of the board, I respectfully request that the board certify the results of the 2024 general election held on Tuesday, November 5th. The results are contained or will be contained in the summary results report that you will receive titled General Election 2024 Official Results before you today in a moment. This certification consists of all federal, state, and local contests and referendum question results voted upon either by early voting, mail ballots, or election day. The following is my report to the board on the conduct of the general election for 2024. A total of 517,199 ballots were cast, an overall turnout percentage of 65.67% for the election. Of the 787,559 eligible voters, 289,588 or 56% voted on election day at the polls. 55,763 or 11% voted a mail ballot, and 171,848, which is the highest ever, or 33% of voters cast an early voting ballot during the 20 days preceding the election at their assigned early voting locations. Compared to the 2022 general election, we've seen election day voting drop from 71% of ballots cast to 56%, while early voting has seen an increase from 20% to 33% of ballots cast in the election. Mail voting also saw a slight increase from 9% to 11% of mail ballots, of ballots cast. Historically, the turnout on November 5th was the highest since the 2008 general election, which saw a turnout of 69.5%, and the second highest since the 1996 general election, which saw a turnout of 65%. It was the second highest number of ballots cast in the state in over 40 years. second only to the 2020 general election. In total, 59,238 voters requested mail ballots. 55,763 of those voters returned their ballots to the Board of Elections, with 3,475 mail ballots not returned by voters. 156 mail ballots were deemed deficient, either due to mismatching signatures or no signatures at all during our 12 public mail ballot certification sessions, which began on October 16th and ended on November 12th. 67 of these voters cured their mail ballots by the deadline, which was November 12th at 4 p.m. 21,823 voters, 21,823 mail ballot voters deposited their mail ballot at one of the 41 Board of Elections drop boxes, which, as you know, are located throughout the state, or at the Office of the Secretary of State's office in Providence, and here at the Board of Elections at our facility. The drop boxes collected 38% of all the mail ballots received. They received 8,222 of these ballots in the last 5 days. That's 37% were put into the drop boxes in the 5 days leading up to Election Day. 728 ballots were deposited in the drop boxes during the first 15 days of the new 35-day drop box period. As you know, the board introduced legislation to increase the drop box period from 20 days to 35 days. And 728 ballots took advantage of that extra 15 days at the front. 311 voters deposited their mail ballots at one of the 410 polling place receptacles located within the polling places on Election Day, which represents less than 1% of the 55,763 mail ballots returned in total. 7 receptacle ballots were voided for being improperly placed within the receptacles by voters at the polling place, and that is according to board regulations on the receptacles. 33,948 voters returned their ballots through the United States Postal Service, representing 61% of the total ballots received. Compared to the 2022 general election, which is a better comparison than 2020 because of the pandemic, compared to the 2022 general election, the number of ballots placed into drop boxes has increased from 20% to 38% of the total, while ballots returned through the United States Postal Service dropped from 73% to 61%. The percentage of ballots returned through the polling place receptacles remained the same at 1%. Our seasonal employee, Charlotte Larandru, administered the mail ballot nursing home program, in which 15 bipartisan pairs of supervisors administered 3,084 ballots at 134 different facilities across the state of Rhode Island over a 14-day period. This represents 6% of all mail ballots requested. In preparation for the general election, Mike Forrester, Jen Regan, Rob Quinn, Johanna Petrarca, and Olivia Fitz conducted poll worker training. Supervisor training consisted of 2 live virtual classes with supervisors viewing from town halls and a recording that was also distributed. Approximately 1,960 supervisors were trained. The staff also conducted 13 in-person training sessions, as you can see here on the screen, which typically begin at 5 p.m. And this was for approximately 940 moderators and clerks. The final class was conducted on Friday, November 1st. This task usually requires an extended 14-hour workday for our full-time staff, as classes typically do not end until 9 or 10 p.m. And as staff, they have their normal duties to attend to during the day for preparation. And because they are the most knowledgeable about elections, they are clearly the the folks we want to have teaching the poll workers and training the poll workers. It's not something that we can delegate to seasonal staff. So that's why the full-time staff is so involved with poll worker training in the evenings. However, they do have their primary responsibility, either processing mail ballots, setting up in the logistics of the warehouse, or just day-to-day operations that require their attention here at the Board of Elections during the day. In preparation for the general election, Jacob Gansert also conducted a virtual training session for BOE for our technicians to support specific precincts at the state throughout the day. And they also conducted a second in-person training for any new technicians the Saturday before Election Day to make sure that they had hands-on training on how to repair and troubleshoot either the express vote units or the DS200s and other various laws and requirements at the polls. Patty Chattel processed paperwork for the hiring of 162 temporary employees to assist with the conduct of the election, which includes our Election Day technicians as well. In addition to their regular duties, our campaign finance staff, which as you know is led by Rick Thornton, and his staff consisting of Isa, Anthony, Pam, and seasonal employee Amber, assisted the election staff in many aspects of the elections process, including mail ballot tabulation, recounts, and the risk limiting audit, as well as being on the front line, honestly, of fielding thousands of election-related phone calls during the election cycle, since our campaign finance division is the front lines for us to handle the calls such as where's my polling place, am I registered to vote, etc. Our staff sent 236,000 ballots for early voting and 583,000 ballots to the polls for Election Day. Early voting was so popular, in fact, that a total of 44,100 supplemental ballots were delivered to early voting sites before early voting ended. Jacob Ganser and Jan Bezmarowski worked to coordinate the preparation of all the election equipment and materials under Deputy Director Johanna Petraka, and coordinated the deliveries of our moving vendors, Hogan movers, Kotu movers, and Deanne Van Lines. For early voting, the staff prepared and sent 83 DS200 tabulating machines, 44 express vote voter assistance devices, and 335 voting booths, 93 supply boxes, and 121 electronic poll books. For Election Day, the staff prepared and sent 507 DS200s, 453 express vote machines, and 4,177 privacy booths, as well as 524 blue supply boxes and 1,500 electronic poll books. This represents the most equipment that the Board of Elections has ever sent out and deployed to the polling places for either early voting or Election Day. And as I mentioned earlier, we had 113 technicians located throughout Rhode Island on Election Day. The Board of Elections received approximately 137 calls through our call center that day. During that day, 9 DS200s and 7 express votes were replaced throughout the day by our technicians. This concludes my report on the certification of the November 5th, 2024 general election. And before I conclude, I also want to let the board know that we have confirmed that all equipment has been returned to our warehouse. We have accounted for all of our DS200s and voting equipment through a diligent process that has been headed up by Deputy Director Johanna Petraka. But certainly we want to look into getting a more robust software system rather than using what we use now, so we can get those answers about the inventory much quicker than we do currently. That is definitely going to be a high priority for us moving into the next year, into the next election cycle. With your approval, I ask that the board certify these results, which will be sent to the Honorable Secretary of State, Greg M. Amori. I have the new results here which have been updated with the mail ballots, which you have just approved earlier in the meeting. and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Miguel.
Do we need to, do you want copies of this or pass it around?
I think we just pass it, maybe.
No.
I
Miguel,
presume that
Miguel, I
this
have
is
a
every
couple of
race.
questions, Miguel.
Yes.
Good.
Do we have a number on those people who cast provisional ballots and those who register to vote on election day to vote for the president?
So for election day, I know that, I have that number here. And actually, Patty, you have the number on the, I gave that number to Patty earlier for your certification. So before we forget, you also have to sign the certificate. And that includes the number of provisional ballots cast. So I can give you that in a minute. For the election day, I believe it is 9,369 voters registered to vote and cast ballots for president and vice president on election day.
And they would cast their ballots at the local board of canvassers.
For the most part, yes, there are a couple of locations that are alternatives, such as in Johnston, they use the Education Center, and Providence uses the Amica Mutual Pavilion. But for the most part, it is, yes, at the city or town hall.
Chair, while you're looking at that, I'd like to congratulate Executive Director Nunez on his first presidential election as director.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Job well
as,
done.
as I always said, with the staff that I have, I think the staff has shown time and time again the amount of dedication that they have to these processes, not only to how things have been done, but they're very open to how things can be improved. And I think that I lead by example with them. I don't like the saying, "This is how it's always been done." That's a saying that I don't lend myself to. So I certainly always looking and asking them for their feedback of how to improve any processes, as well as bringing in outside organizations to assist us, and also listening to our critics to make sure that in any way that we can improve the process from start to finish, we look to do that. And to answer your question, Commissioner Scholes, if I may, there were 1,877 full provisional ballots cast. So that means every office on that provisional ballot was counted. And we had a total of 513 federal offices only provisional ballots cast. And finally, we had 120 president and vice president only provisional ballots cast.
Thanks, Miguel. And just want to echo thanks to everyone. And just to say one thing I'm really proud of in the evolution of this board is that, and I hope people can see that we do ask a lot of questions. We do push the staff and each other, and I think that's a good thing. I think it hasn't always been that way, and I think dissent and constructive criticism and feedback is really important because it gets us to the right answer on behalf of all involved in elections, and really proud that we open our doors and are transparent and open to the public and folks that, might have questions about the process and the integrity of elections, to be able to see firsthand that we do in fact uphold the integrity of the elections in this office. So wanted to just say that and thank everyone for their participation on this board as well. I enjoy working with all of you.
Just gonna get the total number of cats. and
Okay.
I'll come back for the
Yeah,
certified.
we're gonna
Okay.
update this
Okay.
with the new numbers from that report I just gave you, and then you'll be able to sign. So if you're done with that report,
It's that side.
Do we have to wait for the document to be ready to sign to adjourn, or?
Well, the vote needs to be done by the board in an open meeting. The document can be signed after you adjourn. They just have to sign it.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board has. If not, that completes my report.
Does
Madam Chair,
anyone
may
wish-
I have a motion?
Yes, sir.
I move that the board certify the results of the November 5, 2024 general election as presented by Miguel Nunes, our Executive Director.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, comment, questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
And do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, go ahead. You don't want, no one
Motion
wants
to
to
adjourn?
adjourn?
Maybe we don't want to be adjourned.
Okay, let's stay. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned at 4:53 PM, but board members, please stay so that we can sign the certificate. And thanks, everyone.